Hi, my name is Steven Lam, and I'm going to show you how to build my brother's PC. This is not really a tutorial. It's a little bit too scuffed to be a tutorial, but I don't know, it's nice to see it anyways. So the biggest parts that my brother bought was the Ryzen 7 3700X, the 5700 XT XFS for the GPU, and the RAM is just the Corsair LPX 16 gigabytes. We're just gonna take out the motherboard, put the CPU in, the RAM in, and then we're gonna put that into the PC case and then start putting in everything else like the GPU and the case fans. So to install the RAM, you would have to push down the buttons first, and then you're gonna align the notch on the RAM to the notch on the RAM slot. And then it should fit. If the notch are not aligned, you can't even put the RAM in. So that's a telling sign right there. I also made a little mistake here from the graph that I'm showing you guys a little above. When you're installing your RAM, like the RAM should go on the second and fourth slot. But in this video, I put it in as the first and third slot. I was just kind of giving it a little test drive, see if it works or not. But it doesn't work. If you put it on your BIOS, like when you load it up, it would say like there's a RAM error. So you're gonna have to put it on your 2 and 4th spot if you have 2 RAM. I'm now going to install the Ryzen CPU. At first, we're going to have to lift up that latch, the CPU latch, and then there's going to be an arrow on the CPU, and we're going to align that arrow with the arrow on the motherboard, which on the picture it shows that it's on the bottom right corner. And almost like the same thing like the RAM, it should fall completely in perfectly when you're putting it in like this. It should be a really smooth transition. And so the next thing we're gonna do is gonna try to install the heatsink, and to install the heatsink, there will be that 2 black handles on the side of your CPU. It's screwed down to your motherboard, and you're gonna try to get the latch on the heatsink, if you're using the stock cooler, to kind of attach to that black latch right beside the CPU. And you're trying to do it for both sides so that it connects completely on the motherboard. Yeah, I kind of covered it up, but the camera wasn't positioned too well. And the next thing we're going to do is try to install the NVMe onto the board. And to do that, we're going to need the screw that attached to the motherboard that holds the NVMe in place. So we're going to get that NVMe screw, and then for the length of the NVMe, we're gonna place it where it can fit onto the motherboard, and then screw it in. We're gonna screw that NVMe screw in first, and then after that, get the second screw and screw the NVMe on top of the first screw. Now we have the motherboard completed with the CPU intact and the RAM. So now we're going to start screwing that motherboard inside the PC, where there's about 9 holes that you have to screw in to lock it into the to the case. Once we have the IO shield installed, now we're going to line up the motherboard to the 9 screws on the PC case. And then after that, we're going to screw the motherboard into the PC case to hold it down. So to install the GPU, we're gonna have to remove the rear brackets of our case so that the GPU can hook onto that empty bracket slot, and you can screw it down. And so right now I'm gonna screw off all those brackets and make space to kind of push in the GPU. Yeah, and to plug it in, you just gotta open up the notch handle and then push the GPU into the notch slot. Once you have the GPU plugged in, then you're going to start screwing it into that rear bracket so that it's in place. While I'm at it, I'm also going to take the time to unscrew more of the rear brackets and install in the network card. It's kind of tiny and I kind of messed up on the video. Can't really see me installing the network card too well. The next step is we're going to start to take our power supply and plug all those cables into the motherboard, the GPU, just to run power through our computer so it'll be able to turn on. We're gonna unscrew the back case first and then plug the power supply through there, and then screw the power supply into the rear casing. After we got the power supply screwed into our case, we're gonna loop those cables on the other side to get ready to insert them to whichever parts need power. So to plug power into your system, you're just going to get the cable. You can do it in any order. I'm first going to plug in the CPU power, which is a 4+4 pin, into the CPU slot on the top right of on the top left of the motherboard. Know which cable is which. It will be labeled. It will probably say something about the CPU or it being a 4+4 pin. And on the motherboard, it would say CPU power 1, and that's where you're going to plug that cable in. You can look here, and it's pretty hard to plug in. The next thing we're going to plug in is the ATX power, also known as the motherboard power, and that's going to be the 24 pin. It'll also be labeled on the cable, just so that you know, or you can just count the amount of numbers, but it should be the biggest one. The next power we're going to plug in is for the GPU, and depending on your GPU, if it's a very high-end GPU, then it will require 2 8-pins to plug in. Or if it's just if it's just a really budget GPU, then you will probably only need 8-pin power to plug in. And now we're just gonna plug in all the USB headers from the case USB headers into the motherboard. And this stuff is just like the power button when you press on the case, or the USBs, or to plug the USBs in from the top of the case. Now I'm just gonna plug in the antennas for our network card, and then after that we're just gonna rescrew in all those rear brackets that we unscrewed before, because we're not gonna really need to unscrew anything else inside the case. So we're done with that part. For the fan that I bought, it came with this USB hub that you can connect all the fans to this hub. And to do this fan, you need to connect it to a SATA cable. The same thing that you plug in with your hard drive. And once you plug it into that SATA cable, you can connect all those fans into that hub. And then now we're gonna have to install all the PC fans into our case. So for my case, all the fans in the front would be intake fans, where the air will blow out from the outside into the case and then out the other end from through the back of the case. And you can see through the picture, on the grill side picture of it, it says where the back with the sticker and the plastic, that's the direction where the air is gonna flow in. So we want to position it like that inside the case. And because we want the air to come out on that backside fan to use as an exhaust, we're gonna place the sticker part of it onto the outside so that the air will blow in that direction. And for the top of our case, we're also gonna have it as an exhaust fan where the air blows out of the case through the top. Once we have all those fans installed, we're gonna loop them to the back of the case where we're gonna attach our hub on also to the back of our case, and then we're gonna plug in all those case fans into this hub, into this fan hub. so that power can run through it because it's connected to our power supply. There you can see, we turned on the computer, it started lighting up, and the computer is fully built. It's finished, and now we just need to install Windows. That's all that I have for footage, but the computer is completely good, and my brother's been loving it. So the last thing I want to show you guys is some benchmarks of the computer and just the final product. It looks pretty nice. Thank you for watching my video. If you have any questions, just ask me below. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible.